My palette is a glass plate and I use an MDF panel to paint on. That panel is divided with a grid and it has the same size, the exact same size as the image on my screen. Before I start, I give the canvas, well, this is a DM panel that I prepared myself. I give it a thin wash of a color. Because of the white hair, I can't have the white of the canvas, the board, because how can I come more white? So I give it a thin wash of a mixture of raw sienna and green. But very thin, viridian green. It shows up very dark, but later it will turn out less dark. I will wipe it off. I still see my grid lines. Well, that will do. I wipe it off a little bit with paper rag. And I let it dry for half an hour, more or less. I start my painting with raw sienna. I only divide this one in the rule of thirds, and that must be enough to keep me on track. I could do, and if you really want to, you can make more divisions, but I think I can handle this. And because of the preparation, there is still some terps in this surface, so it's for me easy to paint. You see the brush strokes really are nicely received. You could prepare your underdrawing far more detailed, but I would say give it a try to do it this way. It's also a sort of search instead of filling in by numbers. Now here is the eye. Let me paint it in. And maybe here's some by the other. And I would say, do the best you can, but allow yourself to fail. Have fun. That is the most important thing. The shadow, the cast shadow under her nose, is it there? Maybe it has to go a little bit higher, but later I can check. If you feel more comfortable with more guidelines or a grid, do so. But remember, there's also a challenge to do it this way. Is this too long? I think it is. Here, the lovely hair. That lock of hair going down. Well, this is higher. Well, is the nose too long? I can check it immediately with my compass with toothpicks, wooden toothpicks, and I can check because it has the same size from that grid line. Yeah, a little bit. We could, well, I'm not sure. Well, that is the way I check my drawing from the grid line, based on the grid line. For instance, from the line here to the hair, well, you see, it's more or less okay. The chin, is it the chin too low? Going down, here, the bottom. The chin could be higher. Okay, higher. Must be there. It's a simple blocking of the first stage. This is my palette with the usual colors. You can find the brand and the numbers below in the description. I make some pre-mixtures. I will pre-mix some flesh colors, and I want it to be more warm and a little bit darker. If you paint from pictures, realize that the light usually is too light, so I have to make it a little bit darker in order to show the highlights. Here the highlights. Right. First I will make a mauvish color, because of the blonde hair. I see her hair here in the picture is rather greenish, and maybe I will knock that green a little bit down with my magic mauve, ultramarine blue and crimson. And I add white to that mixture because I want to see what color it will be. You know by now already, if it's not blue or red, then it's mauve. It is too bluish, so a little bit of more crimson. This is, for me, an important color. And people ask me, why don't you use just a purplish tone right from the tube? But sometimes they are far too transparent. So this is what I like for my mauvish color. I will park it over here and I make it a little bit lighter going down. I continue with the flesh color. Usually there is in white, Terra, Rosa, and this is really reddish. Because I work from the screen, I can't use a test strip because you see, you can't judge. I do it more or less by intuition. So I make this one here. And I need also a lighter version. I also make a more reddish one, less dull. Cadmium red deep. And I see on the picture, if I think this is a color that could be very useful, because here it might be too yellowish. Also a little bit of white on the string. I need a color for the shadow, and that's a problem in this picture as well. You see these shadows are grayish dark. Now, if you see these gray, usually on photographs, if you see these gray tones, it's up to you to make it gray or not. I want to make it warmer. As I always say, shadows are warm, and that's only in portrait painting. If you paint plein air, the shadows far away are more bluish. I love to think of a more warm shadow. Usually it is a red and a green. Makes it a sort of brownish, and that's a good way to start. Later I can change that color a little bit towards more dull or more greenish or whatever. Shall I prepare more? I think for the hair I will prepare it right away from scratch. I think this is a good palette to start this portrait. First of all, my burnt umber, and I will thinly paint the shadow parts. I need that dark statement because I need to know how it is related to the lights. A small one under the nose. And let me add a little bit of that transparent oxide red because I want it to be warmer. thin. Usually darks, usually the shadow, the dark parts in the shadow are more transparent than the light ones. The light ones usually are far more opaque. The lips, the same thing. The upper lip. Under the chin, there is also a shadow. Of course, it's the deepest, darkest part in the portrait, one of the darkest parts in the portrait. And I'll start, I forget about the hair, I start to paint the deep shadow. And since this is transparent, I can easily lay on top the locks of hair. And now before I start with the skin color, I really need to know the power of that sweater. So I take a bigger brush for the turtleneck blue. But usually when I paint blue, I add more crimson. This is a dark statement. And still it's a little bit transparent. Ultramarine blue and crimson. And here, this area and here, I really want to merge that beautiful hair connecting with the sweater. And so, I don't paint all these single strings of hair. It must be the sort of unsharp, bluish ending of where the hair goes. There is no way of painting all these strings of hair from the beginning, because that's really nonsense and it will end up silly. Here also maybe a sharp edge, here softer. Here also where the hair merges in the sweater. These locks of hair. The power of this portrait is in these two forms, for me. Now running down, I add some white spirit because maybe I will end up in a sort of vignette way of painting. And therefore I want to end in a sort of loose way, downwards. Now I go to the flesh colors. Usually I paint the dark parts first. This shadow on this halftone, but I prefer to start with the local color. The local color on the forehead, that's the color that the real face has. Because the halftones and the shadows receive information from or the sweater or something in my studio, so it could have any color. And there is no need to repeat exactly that shadow. There is no need to do so. I start on the forehead. Is it too reddish? Well, this one is not really too reddish. It's dark enough. Maybe you could say my color is a little bit too bright, but it's easy to bring that down. It's always easier to knock down a bright color than to bring back alive a dead one. Maybe the skin tone, this mixture is a little bit too light, and it's easier to make skin tones lighter later. If I start too light, the portrait will become lighter and lighter and lighter. So maybe it's a good idea to make it a little bit darker. It is just a subtle step darker. This area above her eyebrow is more of this crimson. So already make that shift, the change of color. Well, merge these ones. That lock of hair comes later here on top, so maybe I continue the color of the forehead. On top later I will lay that lock of hair, but there is a shadow of that lock of hair. That's what I really have to paint. So what is this color? That is a shadow. So let me make a brownish shadow, red and green. Maybe a touch of ochre. I'm not sure. Make it a little bit lighter with this one. It's too stiff. Make it warmer with a little bit of this yellow. And here also that string. I'm not so happy with that color, so let me take it off. Here is more yellowish in, and there. And here the same thing. Maybe I can do this here. Here one, the shadow part of the nose also is warm, and I make it warmer and more colorful. Never use black or blue in shadows. It's killing. What shall I do? Never use black or blue in the shadow, because that's really, it doesn't match. It really does not match. So make shadows out of reds and greens. You see I added a little bit of this Chromium oxide green. Makes it a little bit darker. I forget about the shapes. It's a simple blocking. On the nose there is also that same sort of purplish, pinky, let's say pinky color. And the same pinky color, but lighter under her eye. And I mean here. If it has to be lighter, later I can make it lighter. It's easier to make lights lighter and darks darker. Going to the cheek. A little bit more of red, a touch of this yellow, lemon yellow. And is that too dark? No, I'm not sure, but I think it does the job. You see, it's far more colorful than the grayish halftone on her cheek, And that's what I really want to explain to you. There is no need to make that shadow, that halftone, so dull. There is no need for that. Invent these halftones. The local color, the real skin color, is important to get that right. But the shadows and the halftones, well, you're free to do, because there could be another information from here. And it's early enough to make your painting dull. I see here also a grayish shadow on that part of the cheek. I keep it bright, I keep it colorful. And maybe I ask myself I should add a soft, nice green, because that's what I need. Let me add that on my palette. Permanent yellowish green. Where shall I put it? Here. Because this is a little bit too reddish, so a lovely greenish shade to make the red a little less reddish. Going to the chin, the lighter part of the chin. That's too dark. This is better. Under the bottom lip, there's also the shadow of that chin part, and also here I make it warmer. Warmer, it's more grayish on my picture, but I make it warmer. The other part is a little bit more grayish, so carefully my mauve makes it a little bit more grayish. But I'm careful. I mean, it's dangerous to add too much of that purplish color. The chin itself, the light part of the chin here, is sort of pinky also. Now it turns downwards, and here I also make it less grayish. Maybe later it could reflect a little bit of this blue, but that's later. And you see, my statement, my blocking is far more colorful than you would say from the picture. And then when the mouth turns, the upper lip turns to the wrinkle over here, there is some green. Maybe you don't see it, and maybe I don't see it, but I think I see it. That green. That cheek connects with the halftone over there. A grayish touch here. And again back to the upper lip, the part under the nose, that pinky one. I still apply a thin layer of paint. Once I'm sure that I'm safe, I add more paint. I will build up more paint. Under her eyes is a certain I mean, what is it? Purplish, again, purplish color. Purplish grayish, maybe like that. The same one here. The shadow part of that eyeball over here. No, it has to become more warm. Above her eye that's really a grayish one, so I'll do it like that. Later I must reshape everything, of course. This one for that light accent here. I mean, here, right under the nose, that crisp light. The mouth itself. Maybe this is with my raw sienna, my burnt sienna, a little bit too brownish, so I'll knock it down a little bit. I wipe it off in order to come up with a nice reddish upper lip color. Cadmium red deep, a touch of blue, is it too red? Well, I make this statement over here. The corner of the mouth going to the right, I see more reddish. And then where the upper lip ends, also a softer shadow. The bottom lip is more light and more pinky. I go to the hair, because more or less I did everything I wanted to do here. Or is it here that I can make already more of a warm shadow in the eye socket? It's more grayish over there, but I do it like this. Before I start with the hair, I must make some connection with the background, I think. What shall I do? Shall I make it that bluish? Well, let me do that first. Maybe that's a good idea. And that's a part that I really can dilute more with terps. Well, I'm not sure. soft connection already because I don't want to be here so sharp. It's the luck of the draw what I'm doing now. But anyhow, I have something to relate to. Now, before I start with the hair, I have a message for those who asked me why I am publishing less videos than before. There is a why. I help my wife in the kitchen garden more often. We make long walks every day around the village here. We spend a lot of time with the grandchildren. And last but not least, I dedicate a lot of time to my long neglected love, my guitar. At the end of this video, I will play you something. And in the hair, of course, let me do it with a palette knife, because I need a load of paint, really a lot of paint, white and yellow ochre, because it's ochreish, the hair. But to knock down that ochreish color, mauve comes in, and that's really an important color, an important mixture for this portrait. And let me see, yeah, it's not too bad. Make a nice connection with the skin color there. Here maybe a little bit more of ochre and a little bit more of mauve in this corner. It's a little bit darker, but later I can do that. And maybe the lightest part of that hair I can make out of white and viridian green, a touch. As shadows are warm, highlights are coolish. So this is, look, this is a coolish color, coolish mixture. Not too light, because on top of that I must introduce the last locks of hair. And I'm already preparing that lovely lovely connection of that softness of that hair. Look. Well, where the lock of hair here is transparent, there must be some skin color to be seen. So, something like that. And of course she has white hair, so you think it is a lot of white, but there is also a lot of darkness to be seen. Don't forget that. You think, well, white hair is white, but there is so much darkness, also darker shade, halftones in the hair to be seen. And and it's important to realize that you make these parts a little bit darker, because on top of that you must be able to paint the lighter parts, the light locks of hair. So actually I'm thinking of the part in between the locks of hair. You see, it's darker than the picture shows. Soft connection, soft connection. Here there is really some green to be seen, and I said green, so let me make green. going up. Don't make it too light, don't make it too light. The darker part of the hair is greenish over there, and I make it greenish but less greenish, more red. See, is it nice? No, let me add some more ochre and knock it down a little bit with that mauve. Is it nice? Does it do the job? Maybe more ochreish. Soft connection there. Where it meets the background, always soft. Shall I make it darker? I'm not sure yet. Here is the darkest part of it, and this is where it turns so lovely. That curve is so nice. Until here the hair locks are sort of strong, but then it disappears in the sweater, so there is a unsharpness. But it must represent that beautiful floating all over sweater. Now the lightest part of the hair on top. Touch of yellow ochre, viridian green, and a bit of mauve. Oh, take care. Don't make a mess. This is not really nice over here. Stupid me. Well, shit happens. Here, that sweater where the hair lays on top must be some higher. Well, this is the first step. Now I sit back and take a rest. Now it's important to know, are the tonal values right, more or less the color right, then I can build up the amount of paint. The whole painting is covered with paint. Now I continue with the darkest part in the face. I know more or less that I'm on track, so maybe this is too reddish. I can knock it down later. Let me give the lady more eye. Maybe I need my guidelines back. This is the way that I do. You see, I sharpened with a pencil sharpener the end of my brush, and I try to find back my guideline over here. I don't know if you see it, but it's exactly what I need. Take care that I don't ruin my painting. Where is it? Here. And there. The intersection over there. Can you see it, what I did? Right, she has dark, dark eyes. Shall I do it with burnt umber? Now I see my guidelines, I can put in my eye more easy. Now she's coming to look around, give the lady eyes. The eyelashes are also dark, but I know by experience that it can be too dark. So in this mixture of burnt umber, I add some of the transparent oxide red. Somewhere there. Maybe I add some Terra Rosa, because I want this part more reddish. People say don't use burnt sienna, burnt umber so much because it's a lousy color and it will over the years cause problems. Could be, but I'm not interested in over the years. I'm not painting for eternity, I'm painting for fun. So that's there. There is a cast shadow in the wrinkle, no, cast shadow, no, there is a shadow in that wrinkle above that eyelid, and here also. And let me do that first before I put on the light of the eyelid. The eyebrow over there, I mean here, is grayish. And I didn't make any gray. Let me make first some neutral gray. That's what I need as well. Ivory black, white, and a touch of yellow ochre to make it neutral, otherwise it will be too bluish. I hope you can see it. This is a neutral gray, and I don't need so much, but some of it I do need. It turns over there, turns away, so I'm sort of fooling around with my brush because I don't want sharp forms. The other eyebrow also is grayish, but there is more skin tone in, so I think my eyebrow here is too high. So I measure it with my compass and, well, it's not that bad. That's the fun of these guidelines, you can always check. Okay, purplish, but I mix it with my skin color. I mean this shadow part. Not too heavy, you don't do a favor to the lady if I make this shadow too heavy. You see, now I'm building up paint. Without paint you can't paint. Remember that. In this amount of paint I can add more paint. That's the beauty of the paint. I do see people not using enough paint, and in the end they are blending dry on dry and it doesn't go anywhere. You're scraping off, but blending, you scrape always paint off from the canvas. I take my synthetic square brush and see if I can, let me use my marl stick because it must be somewhere there. It blends with the paint, the previous paint. It's difficult because I want to put it in the good position. And I don't want to do it with a pointy brush. Maybe in the end I will. Here there is clearly less light on that eyelid. On the bottom eyelid there is also that same color, that same light. And here, somewhere there, here is something going wrong. So here my thin pointed brush. First I take off this one and put in a new light. That's better. And building up because it's lighter. Now we are talking. Here, let me do it this same thing. Well, I try to avoid to paint with a small brush because there is a risk that you add too many details. And it's about the bold brush stroke. There is some white of the eye to be seen. And I do that with mauvish, the mauvish color. And I paint on top, but fooling around with my brush. Here it's really dark, the white of the eye. White of the eye, remember, is not white, never. It's called white of the eye, but it's never white. So I take care that I hover on top. I don't want to be so exact, you know. I'm just fooling around, hanging around the truth. It's about a painting, not about a photograph. I hope you can see what I'm doing. There is a clear, heavy light where the upper eyelid starts. Well, that's far too much. But I can reshape it a little bit. So, and make the same statement again here. I go to the cheek bone under the eye, and in this side it's a little bit lighter, and there is a sharp light accent, and I mean this one. If I see the distance between the bridge of the nose and the cheek, I think this volume is too much. Okay. The tip of the nose is grayish, reddish grayish. I keep painting with my mauvish color. So that gives the shape of the nose. The nose itself is more or less the good color, but it has to be built up with more paint. I think, as I mentioned earlier, this shape is a little bit to the left, too much. So I have to correct it, otherwise there won't be any balance. There is green and mauve over there. Let me first correct that one. Where am I? And it's just nothing, you know, but it has to be corrected, otherwise there is a strange form over there. That's too much, but well, it's too dark, but you know, I think it can't do so much harm. Later I will check it again. That light on that eyelid has to be extended more to the right. And I still do it with this small pointed brush, but I have to do it with more paint. And not too light, it will otherwise jump off. Somewhere there. And also here. And it is starting just where the nose, where it touches the nose. So here more or less. Where to continue? Let me first take off this to accent. This could be a nice statement, but it has to be softened because I don't want to be sharp over there. Let me continue with the mouth. A deep dark shadow in the separation here. And here as well. Now the bottom lip. There is pure purple, reddish purple. And I think this could be the color. White and cadmium red, deep. To the right, yeah, it's difficult. It's all difficult. See the bottom lip? No, I made a mistake. Maybe I can repair it. The tiny little warm shadow under the bottom lip. And that's a warm reddish shadow, and I mean it's here. So once again I check with my compass, and that's the lowest part, so it has to turn earlier. What shall I do? Shall I do it with blue? No. I keep on track with a warm shadow, red and green. And there is a funny shape on her chin now, so see what I can do there. The deep shadow here has to be far, far, far darker. Transparent oxide red and viridian green. Could do it with burnt umber, but I prefer this. Because it's so dark you can't see any separation between the value of the sweater and her neck, the deep shadow over there. The chin continues to the jawline, also in the shadow. So I take this light mixture, mix it with that green, that red what's left. No, I think it has to be darker. Transparent oxide red. And this green, let's see. I don't want that grayish, and this is warmer, you see? Let me go back to the hair. I want more darkness here, light and dark. Let me see if I can make a dark shadow out of green, viridian green, and transparent oxide red. That's the value that I want to see. And that hair runs down. Once again, these two. You see, for these accents, I don't use any black. I don't use black. If you see that dark accents, black is killing. And I don't know why people don't understand that. Black is nice if you need to make some gray and some accents in the eyes, okay, but to make colors darker, forget about black, really, believe me. It's up to you, but I store my panel in the fridge overnight so the paint stays fresh for the next day. Well, start my day again. My paint still is wet. I can continue painting. I'm not really unhappy how it turned out here, so I think I won't do here anything more. I won't paint any single hairs because that's really killing, then it will be silly. So maybe I'll continue painting, but maybe I will do only the negative spaces in between these hairs. I want to keep that softness of that hair running down. Here might be more to be done because this is not really floating hair. Here I'm happy, but here I'm not. And I think this lock of hair is too much of a curve. Well, we'll see. The hair, white, a lot of white. Ochre. A touch of this mauve to knock it down, and this is one of the lighter parts. Where should I put the lighter parts? For instance, here. And light parts always are thick paint. Shadows you can paint more transparent, less paint, but the light parts always build up with a load of paint. The more paint, the stronger, the heavier. On top maybe the purest white. Is it, well, an accident? I don't know what to do with it, but before I repair, I continue here. Maybe my brush is too big, but yeah, let me do it with a smaller one. More white, more ochre, more mauve. Too much ochre. As I said in the beginning when I started to paint the hair, also in the hair highlights could be cool. A cool light of that hair is white and viridian green. Makes a shift of temperature. This overall is warmish, and with that viridian green it turns more cool. You see what I mean? Well, maybe it doesn't show up so much, but it's the change of temperature. Going down, I must take care that I don't ruin the freshness of the hair going down. So what shall I do? Well, some detail here where it touches the blue of the turtleneck. Maybe I should add some negative spaces, and that's what I can do with this small brush. Some flesh tone, but dark, because it's in the shadow over there. And I need my mouth stick because I really wanted to put it on the right place. A negative space somewhere here. Not too much. As always, not too much. Could be too much already. As I always say, if you see 100, make 10. If you see 10, make 1. Too many details weakens the painting, weakens the portrait. So, and it doesn't matter if it's really on the right spot, because hair can fall in any shape. So don't be afraid that you don't put the locks on the exactly right place, but it also has to do with rhythm. I must avoid that I have all these strings at the same rhythm, at the same repeated form. So that's why I must destroy this one. As I said, here I want really a light part, so I do it with a bigger brush. I load my brush with paint. I can add some negative spaces here as well. And once again I do it with a small brush. The negative space of the blue. The blue sweater that shines through. Blue, but it's very thin blue, a very weak blue because of the hair that shines through. Let me try with this one. Well, first here. Carefully. It can be darker and less bluish, so I add transparent oxide red. Not too many details, makes it silly, but I see some nice things that I can do here. And that's a thing that I often do. Make it lighter there where the shoulder meets. Gives it fresh air. I don't know how to explain more than fresh air. Crimson. And I don't want to see so many shapes over there. I must explain that this volume is round, a too sharp edge. This was a deep shadow, and I remember it was Viridian green and red, cadmium red deep. And there is a temptation to blend this edge, but I know by experience that that means taking off paint. So I need to come up with paint, and this is too dark, so I must make in-between color, and the in-between color was Terra Rosa. Terra Rosa and Ochre, a little bit of white. It's too ochreish, so more red. Maybe a touch of this green, and see if I can make a believable in-between color. It's tricky, but well, could be worse. A little bit darker. I want to add more light on the face. More light means there must be more contrast. And adding light in the face is maybe a good thing, but first of all, I must be sure that the darks are dark enough. And here the shadow of the cheekbone is not dark enough. Now, I have to prepare a color that matches with the color on the canvas, on my board. So that might be difficult, might be dangerous. But although it's dangerous, I have to go there. Try to make a shadow out of reds and a green. And I'm not sure, I think this is far too dark, and the risk is when I put it on, there is no way back. So is it? Yeah. So here, this is the value more or less, the value that it has. So this is a little bit darker. See, it's just nothing. Carefully I go towards my goal. Is it higher? Yes, it must come a little bit higher. And here, I surely must blend this here. So I do it with this long-haired brush without any paint, and I just cross-hatching over that edge. I have to add more hair because the shape is a little bit odd, so I did finish this painting 2 weeks ago. Now it's really dry. The paint really is dry. But I see new details that I want to change. More light here, some crisp lines here, and the hairdo is something that has to be repaired. I want that lovely, lovely floating hair. How can I add more paint to that already dry paint? There is a trick. I take linseed oil in the palm of my hand. Whoops, that's a little bit too much. And I spit on it, I rub it, and then I go on top of that area that I want to repair. And don't ask me why this works, but it does. So now there is a little bit of linseed oil. Let me add a little bit more. So the first thing that I want to change a little bit is some strings of hair. And the problem now is, first I have to make the same color, because on top of that I can add lighter paint. So start with a little bit of ochre, a lot of white, some mauve to knock it down. Is it too dark? Yes, it is. Now, something here, darker. And now there is a temptation, there's a risk that I overdo this and I ruin the whole thing, because it's difficult to come back on an already dry painting. The freshness easily disappears. A lighter one on top, like here, a little bit lighter, and here also a lighter accent. It's risky. I see here a very subtle purplish shade. This string is to be connected. It's really tricky because, wow, I know it. The whole thing can be ruined. Not sure. Well, my intention was to add some more light here. It's too ochreish. So more light, more white and mauve. Did I do a good job? With a very small brush, the pointed brush, some strings here. Some crisp, like this. A little bit more of light over there. This light has to be extended. Let me do it with the bristle. Tricky. Some of these, they are too dark. Add more mauve because it's more transparent over here. So this is it. As promised, I'll play some guitar for you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.